Need food reserves? Well, come on over to eFoods Global at booksmart.myfoods.com. Again, that's booksmart.myfoods.com. eFoods Global is the gold standard of food reserves. Tell them Wise Wolf sent you. Welcome to the Wise Wolf Project. I'm your host, Wise Wolf. It is Friday, April 8th, 2011. If you go back to my video, Subjugate Me, I talk about new things coming down the pipeline with respect to banking. And I think if you can tell from the tone and tenor of my voice, I don't have a lot of, I guess, goodwill toward banks in general. I think theoretically, the purpose of a bank has great, um, it does wonderful things for the community, but I think they've gotten far away from uh, the original purpose, and thus they've gotten into areas that have caused heavy devastation to our economy and our goodwill. So, what I'm going to try to do in this video is talk about some of the reasons why, or some of the reasons of my contention for and toward the banking industry. Number one, banks created products, if you remember, that led to the crash. These derivative products called CDOs and MBSs and I mean all these alphabet soup type deals, and they sold these products to a lot of people who didn't know what they were doing, including so-called sophisticated investors. And they pushed products such as home mortgages on people that they knew could not afford them, and you know, and at that time they were making billions and billions of dollars off of fees. That's called money on the way up. Well, of course, when people can't pay for things that they're pushing, for products they're pushing, those products have to go down in value. And of course, we had the crash, which happened in noticeably in 2008. Um, but again, they didn't share in the products the festive times, and they didn't give you any money during that time. But when things got bad, and they got bad pretty fast, then they coerced Congress to give them a bailout. And in this particular video, you'll hear our representative in California talking about how when things were hitting the fan, if you will, they pulled a lot of the congressmen and women into a room and said basically, if you don't give us, remember TARP, if you don't sign this bill and give us $700 billion, there's going to be martial law in the streets. So they threatened um, martial law if this bill wasn't passed. And of course, the bill got passed. That's called money on the way down. But even further, which just really, I don't know, everything I'm saying epitomizes why I don't like it. But this really, I hate it for several reasons, and that is FASB changing the rules, the accounting rules, to allow the banks to cook their books, if you will. Remember Enron? Well, after all of that, what we found out in Enron was that there were double books. They were putting one thing on the books to show investors, while on the side or in the back office, they kept another book, the real books of how they were doing. So Congress at that time, and remember this was year 2000, they put in laws, 2000 2001. They put in laws um, to make sure that your whatever you had to market. Basically, whatever the market price was, you had to sell it for that price. And it was a defense mechanism because we didn't want people being defrauded. Well, FASB has said, well, since, we don't really need to do that, it's so harsh. But what was happening was because they sold these derivative products, uh, when it all came crashing down, these products were probably very near worth pennies on the dollar, which meant that companies like J.P. Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Citibank, U.S. Bank, Wachovia, all of these big time banks would have been bankrupt. Bankrupt. So they changed the rules to show on their books that, hey, man, we're doing okay. So by that change, that's called money in the meantime, right? But it didn't stop there. Uh, Banks get favorable tax breaks, and they got favorable tax breaks as they got their TARP money. You see, when a tax break is money that the federal government isn't getting. Now, on top of the fact that the government gave them $700 billion, and by the way, you can substitute government by taxpayer, meaning this is your money. But tax break says that money isn't going back to you, back to the government, where it should be going, especially for those people who have been unworthy, have not been responsible, have not been keeping their nose clean, if you will, with regard to their finances. And they came to us with hat in hand, not with hat in hand, basically with a gun and said, give us the bailout. And our government, number one, rewarded them with a change in accounting rules. Now, they won't change it for you. Who cares about you? We have two sets of people. We have the rich and we have the non-rich. And in case you don't know which one you are, if you have to ask, you're probably in the latter. And so they gave them these tax breaks, which means that that's money not coming back to you, which it should, because you bailed them out. And I like in this article, this paragraph here, it says the tax breaks will cost the government billions of dollars in tax revenue, but the government's stock in the companies is worth more because the value of the company is higher. Well, of course they're higher because FASB changed the rules so that they can say that, that everything's okay. But that's phony. That's phony wealth. So the fact that their stock is up is no indication of how they're really doing. Take the crutches off of them and let's see how they man up, how they hold up. But wait, there's more. Banks then put money into treasury bonds. Now, let me explain to you how ludicrous this is. This is the equivalent of somebody coming to you saying, I need $100, and you give them $100. Let's say they're a friend, so you don't charge them interest at all. And just said, man, you know, just do what you can. And then they come back tomorrow and give you the same $100 back. But instead of just giving you just the $100 back, they say now you owe them interest on top of the money that they just gave you. Now you just gave them the $100. They owe you the $100. And so they give you back the money that they owe you, but they say now you owe them the $100 back as if it was theirs in the beginning, as if they were loaning you the money. And that's exactly what's happening. So we're paying double. The first bit was since the Treasury doesn't have any money, it had to get the money from the Federal Reserve. Well, that money has to be paid back with interest. So the Treasury, i.e. taxpayer, we have to pay that back. But on top of that, the Treasury gave essentially the money to these banks for almost nothing, for free, and then the banks turn around and place it into treasury bonds, which means the Treasury owes whoever the buyer of the bond is plus interest. So you have two hits. Now if that ain't, man, you know, that's called money you pay back. Calm down. Number 6. Then we have a situation where we found out that the Federal Reserve, which is our central bank, gave trillions of dollars to non-U.S. banks. They're not even even American citizens, American corporations, and they got to the tune of trillions of dollars. Do you understand that? At a time when we have businesswomen here who can't get a loan, and if they do get a loan, a business loan, it's at absorbent interest rates, and yet they're giving trillions of dollars, number one, to our banks for basically free, and they're giving money to the tune of hundreds of billions and trillions to foreign banks. Now, does that sound like anything you would want to be involved in? And yet you keep your money with them. But that's all right. That's on you. That's called when the Fed gives money trillions to foreign banks. That's called money for everyone except you. Now, the banks also created a system called MERS, and what it was a way for them to get around filing title. So, because when you file title, you have to, anybody who's done a real estate transaction knows there are fees associated with that. Well, when you're churning out hundreds and millions, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions even of mortgage applications, well, you don't want to be hindered by fees. Now, mind you, they'll put a fee on you in a minute. Overdraft fees. You have to abide by the letter of the law, but they don't have to. Ridiculous. You know, so they created this system that they can bypass all of that. MERS. If you look it up, it is nationwide and it is a catastrophe. It is a catastrophe. I mean, because the banks want to foreclose on these people who have not paid their money, their mortgage, but to do that you have to have the proper paperwork, and they can't produce the paperwork. You cannot make this stuff up. But wait, there's more.